So there's been a lot of speculation over the past couple of months as to what Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, is going to do pertaining to the 2024 election. He's been going on a number of podcasts and doing interviews, sort of teasing a presidential run, but stopping short of actually announcing his bid officially, which of course leaves the door wide open as to what he's actually going to do. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at what Chris Christie's lane would be in the Republican primary, what his motives are for running, and ultimately, if he has any chance at the Republican nomination. So we're going to get into all of that in just a second. But first, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing down below and liking this video if you enjoy. So from my perspective, Chris Christie weighing this run really has to do with whether or not he thinks there's a candidate in the Republican primary that can actually beat Donald Trump. Now, he said a number of times he doesn't think the candidates are going after Trump enough. Certainly candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, who are basically all but attacking DeSantis on behalf of Trump, really aren't attacking Donald Trump. And of course, that's quite odd considering the fact that if you want to be the nominee for the Republican Party, you need to take out Donald Trump. None of the other Republican primary candidates thus far, barring DeSantis as of recently, and I think his attacks could be much stronger, but there really hasn't been a lot of energy against Donald Trump. Obviously, the DeSantis campaign is really the only campaign running so far that has hammered him over the past couple of weeks, and I certainly think it's a bit late considering the fact that we knew for months that DeSantis was going to run for president, yet he really wasn't attacking Trump directly. He would just sort of do the shy pot shot at Donald Trump every now and then and really refused to name him whatsoever, sort of alluding to who he was talking to. So the candidates that are attacking Trump, I think, are doing so from a very sort of weak, scared position. And of course, you have some candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy who just aren't attacking Trump at all and just attacking DeSantis or the other candidates in the race. So Chris Christie is really looking at this field and trying to determine whether or not any of these Republicans actually can take on Trump or will take on Trump as aggressively as he needs to be in order for the Republican nominee to be anyone other than Donald Trump. And that's certainly in Chris Christie's best interest. Now, Chris Christie ran against Donald Trump back in 2016. He got only around 2% of the vote in Iowa. He really had a very late break in that election, in which he attacked Marco Rubio for being essentially very robotic, and he was sort of reciting the same scripted speech during the debate right before New Hampshire. I think 3 times he did it, and of course Chris Christie called him out sort of from that populist angle, saying, here comes the recited 30-second soundbite. And that really destroyed Marco Rubio's entire presidential ambitions. But unfortunately for Chris Christie, that didn't help him. In fact, arguably, it helped Donald Trump and the other candidates in the race. So essentially, he went down with the ship with Marco, but he was really going down anyway. So what really makes Chris Christie think that 2024 will be any different? I would argue that while Chris Christie denies the fact that he's jumping in this race just to take out Donald Trump, that's sort of the sense I get from what he's been saying on a lot of these shows, that Republicans need to go out aggressively against Donald Trump. I think Chris Christie would be much more satisfied destroying Donald Trump and bowing out of the race, allowing another Republican to win the nomination, than jumping into the race and not really making any significant impact. So I really think that's what's sort of weighing on his decision. Can he make enough of a splash to take down Donald Trump, or at least weaken him enough to where one of the other candidates in the primary can finish the job? Now, again, as I've alluded to earlier, a lot of the Republican candidates are still very terrified of Donald Trump. And, with good reason. Most of right-wing media apparatus supports Donald Trump. The entrenched politicians in the Republican Party now support Donald Trump. I mean, you just take a look at the list of endorsements he has from sitting congressmen as compared to DeSantis, Haley, and these other candidates. Trump, by far and away, leads the pack. Many Republicans in the establishment support Donald Trump now. That wasn't the case in 2016, and of course in 2020 they had to support him out of necessity. But now I think many Republicans in the establishment are either taking the path of least resistance, as in they don't like Trump, but they don't think he's beatable this time around, so they're sort of waiting for 2024 to sort of be over with so they can move on regardless, because again, if Trump wins 2024, he can't run for a 3rd term, and of course if he loses, the 2028 primary is going to be open either way. So you have that faction of the establishment. And then you have the fact that Trump's movement, the MAGA movement, his sort of endorsed candidates, are really entrenched in the Republican Party now. I mean, Ronna McDaniel was endorsed by Donald Trump. She is certainly somebody who's sympathetic to Trump's politics. Now, she obviously has to try and at least attempt to represent the entirety of the Republican Party. But she, no doubt, is sort of an ally of Donald Trump. And you certainly have a number of congressmen, a number of governors, a number of senators, and a number of House members that are behind Trump. And, you know, this is really sort of the end result of Trump getting involved in so many Republican primaries. He's gotten these loyalists entrenched in the House, the Senate, the levers of power, so that when the time comes for them to get his back, they have it. And so far, that seems to be what's happening. So Trump is really just playing good politics at this point. He's got his people in, he's getting them in line, and that's one of the reasons why he's currently leading the pack by over 30 points. So, you know, a lot of these polls don't even account for Chris Christie. Chris Christie is so much of a non-factor, you really don't have any solid polling on him whatsoever. So if Chris Christie runs, he really needs to make a massive splash during that first debate in August. And you could argue he might not even be polling high enough to get into that first debate. So that's going to be a huge hurdle for him already. I mean, you've already got Trump, Haley, Ramaswamy, Hutchinson, Scott, and DeSantis. You know, Larry Elder's there, but I really don't think he's going to be that big of a factor, who are already most likely going to be on the debate stage. I don't even know if Chris Christie could get on there. I think that's something he's certainly weighing as well. But I think from his point of view, he only really needs one good debate. He needs one good debate where he torches one or two of the other candidates in order to sort of make headlines and sort of drag down maybe a Haley or, you know, obviously a Hutchinson or something like that, which I think should be fairly easy, especially for somebody like Christie who has such a very aggressive style, very similar to Trump's, by the way. And, you know, it is interesting, again, because Trump and Christie were very friendly with each other throughout the Trump years. I mean, even though Trump beat Chris Christie in the primary and Chris Christie ultimately dropped out pretty early, he was in consideration for the vice president. And, of course, the rumor is, in Republican circles, is that Chris Christie was denied the vice presidency in part because he prosecuted a relative of Jared Kushner, who, of course, is Donald Trump's son-in-law. And, of course, when Trump got wind of that, he wasn't too happy about it. So there was a time period back in the 2016 primaries, I remember very well, that Chris Christie was considered for VP, and many people thought he was going to be the VP. You know, Mike Pence sort of came out of nowhere. He wasn't really on a lot of people's radar when he was picked to be the vice president. And fun fact, Mike Pence actually endorsed Ted Cruz in the 2016 primary. So that was really a good way to sort of get the base united behind Trump again. Pence really made Trump a safe option for evangelicals. If somebody like Pence, who's a very morally righteous, Christian conservative man, can back somebody like Donald Trump, who's been divorced 3 times, was a Democrat most of his life, he made that choice okay for the evangelical Republican base, which is a very significant, important part of the Republican base. But, you know, something Chris Christie had in 2016 he doesn't really have now is a base of support, because in 2016, Chris Christie was still a governor. He was still making, you know, headlines. And besides the occasional criticism of Trump on, you know, various media networks, we really don't hear a lot about him. He's not the current governor, you know, and he's been out of the official political scene for quite some time, besides some commentary here or there. So he's going to have to do a lot to sort of build his own brand and chart his own path. And I think one of the problems he had in 2016 was that while he had a very populist Trumpian sort of message, or at least demeanor about him, Trump just completely overshadowed him, because Christie was basically running essentially the same type of campaign and style that Donald Trump was running. And I think that's one of the reasons that Chris Christie actually could pose a threat to Trump in a sort of way, because Chris Christie does not hold back punches, and Trump knows that. You know, Chris Christie was involved in Trump's debate prep in 2020. He knows a lot about Donald Trump. He's, in fact, the person in the primary who probably knows Trump the most on a personal level. So I think in some ways that's a bit dangerous towards Donald Trump. Now, of course, something Trump has going for him is that Chris Christie is not popular at all nationwide, and he's certainly not popular in the Republican base. So it's going to be an uphill challenge, I think, for Christie to actually make his attacks land in the Republican primary, because most Republicans don't like him or trust him anyway. They see him as slimy, corrupt, an opportunist, establishment, all these sorts of things. And I think that's really going to hurt him. But, you know, again, he really sees this as an essential lane to fill since candidates like DeSantis, Haley really haven't been going after Trump as hard as they should go after Trump if they actually want to win the nomination. Again, Trump's enjoying every second of this because while he's not being attacked by his other rivals, he continues to rise in the Republican primary polling. Again, he's at 53% according to RCP, 54% 538, 38, 33% leads. As of right now, it's not even close nationally speaking, although the statewide polls are a little bit different. DeSantis is in much more of a striking distance, but the point is Trump is by far and away the favorite to win the Republican nomination. And unless things shake up in the next couple of months, that's probably going to be the case. And I think Chris Christie is hoping that he could be the candidate to shake things up and knock off Donald Trump. I think it's going to be very tough for him. And of course, in terms of his path to the nomination, I really don't think he has a realistic one. I mean, let's be honest. In order for that to happen, Trump would have to completely implode. DeSantis would have to completely implode. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Chris Christie is not popular with the Republican base. DeSantis and Trump are very popular among the Republican base. So while they certainly have a very good chance of the nomination, I don't think somebody like Christie does. I think Christie is really going on a kamikaze mission to damage and weaken Trump as much as possible so that another candidate could end up securing the nomination. So anyway, that's it for today's video. Please leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you don't miss any more videos I put out. As always, again, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.